Hi friends! Today is Saturday, January 22nd, 2022. I'm Jamie McGonagill. I am the founder of Ocala Equine Healing. And while I normally in my healing practice work with equine athletes, I do every so often work with human clients. A lot of times they are clients who have seen the results on the horses in their lives, and sometimes they're clients who have come to me through word of mouth. But very similarly to when I work with horses, a lot of the work with these human clients is to help them connect with their own guardian angels. And every so often through that process, we get a client who asks a question that's incredibly relevant to what it means to be a human alive, who's interested to some level or another in the interdimensional process, in divinity itself, etc. So I have a list of questions that have been given to me recently by a client who I've been working with in the healing practice for a while, who represents a lot of the qualities that I think my human clients mostly have. She's very energy sensitive. She's very interested in the relationships of angels to humans. So what we're going to try doing today is we're going to try and find some higher powers upstairs who are interested in answering some of the questions, and we're going to call this client V, who are interested in answering some of the questions that she's asking, not only so that she has the answers, but also so that everyone that she represents can have those answers if they're interested in it. Just so you know, what we're about to attempt to do is interdimensional channeling. When the energy starts moving, I want you to be aware that it's common for me to yawn, for my eyes to move in my head, my breathing patterns change. You can hear like that sharp intake of breath that isn't common in a conversation where you're just talking directly between two normal humans. We're trying to find presences in much, much higher dimensions who might be willing to answer the questions that this client has presented that are pretty representative of, I think, a lot of questions that people have. And we're going to try and translate what they're saying in a way that is understandable to all of us down here, or at least those of us down here who would even stumble across this videoed message. So, all this to say, physical responses are a good sign that energy is moving, and if that freaks you out, then probably everything from this point on is also going to freak you out. So that's really your call. Okay, so what we're going to start to do, this is not a traditional healing session per se, but we're very aware that this particular client is an excellent representative of a group of presences here on planet Earth during this current era who are, like the angels we're talking about earlier, energy sensitive, aware that there is an awful lot more than what we're able to see with our eyes, and there aren't a lot of resources that are available that actually actively deal with or break down some of the intricacies of interdimensional relationships. Now, this client did provide us with a pretty big list of questions. We are not going to get through all of them today, or if we do, it will be very surprising to me. But our best guess of what we're supposed to do in today's filmed healing work is we're supposed to start at the beginning, and we're supposed to get as far as we're able to get, which really in these kinds of question answer sessions is generally about as long as the big guys upstairs are willing to keep answering questions. And we're so grateful for anyone up there who has that significantly higher vibration at a consistent enough level that they're kind of hitting the radar. We're so grateful for them for any amount of time or energy they're willing to share with us, because, and this is probably relevant to the questions, because the important thing for all of us to remember as humans on planet Earth right now is that even if you wake up every morning and you think that you are a very good person based on your actions, based on the way other people respond to your actions, based on a lot of different clues, the fact of the matter is we are all way behind schedule. We are all way behind the amount, the weight of tasks that we were meant to have accomplished. And you know how you can tell is that our planet is being destroyed really rapidly. And we are supposed to stop that from happening. And so all this to say, part of the reason why it's so hard to get anybody upstairs to answer questions is we are already operating at a pretty serious karmic deficit. They don't like us upstairs. And I wish that it worked different. We all kind of wish it worked different. But nobody upstairs is happy with us. And so we got to come into it with an awful lot of gratitude and to try and check our arrogance at the door. All right, so here we go. Now it's really merging in with the group that this client represents, which I think really is a group of presences who were born into human lives on planet Earth in this particular period, who have some kind of responsibility for solving the really massive problems of the planet. There we go. Way up there, we are able to find presences who are responsible for this group. And it's possible really the only reason we're able to connect with these way up higher vibration presences is that they're aware that in some way, shape, or form, when this group of humans dies, and obviously it's unlikely we'll all go at the same time, probably will be one by one, more or less, but these way up higher presences are in some way or another going to be responsible to presences even higher than them, who by normal parlance might be referred to as archangels. There we go. And so if we start to reach up through the dimensional barriers, up that chain of command, kind of using that collective soul plan of the group that the client is a member of, if we start to use that vibration of the destiny to reach up through the levels of higher powers who are responsible for that group, for that community, there, and let's start to ask them if it might be okay for us to ask some questions and try to interpret their answers as best as possible. And I'm going to tell you a secret, that really this has two purposes. The first purpose is, I said two, but I think it's more than two, but there are multiple purposes to this exercise. The first is so that they up there are aware of the kinds of questions that are being asked, the quality of questions, the levels of awareness that are being asked, even by these clients who are self-selecting as people who are interested in esoteric work. So that's one. The second thing is for them to be able to see the response of presences down here when they hear the actual answers, so that upstairs they can have a better idea of what kind of information do they need to be sending down to the humans that they're responsible for. Where is the starting point? Where really are we? So it's really a check-in for them upstairs to be able to understand where we are down here on Earth. And it's usually pretty bleak, and I apologize for that. Okay, so now really reaching up to those guardian angels, we're going to ask if it might be okay for us to start at the very beginning of the list. Earlier we were trying to discern what question to begin with on the list, and we were kind of trying to jump around to see if we might be able to start in the middle of the list. And it feels like the instruction is to just start at the start. Don't get fancy. Okay, so asking way up there if they're willing to answer. The first question from V is, how could the divine spirit get back in touch with humans so that we, meaning humans, can have a better understanding of hearing, seeing, listening to them, and most importantly, understanding our own soul contracts? And this is a great question. And the first point that the higher powers are really wanting to make, and this circles back around to the point of how humanity really is operating at a karmic deficit, is that fundamentally that question is putting the responsibility on divinity. It's saying the angels have to do the work to get us to be able to communicate, get us to be able to understand what we're supposed to do. And we're not trying to say that there is no responsibility on the presences upstairs, but in this particular era, the weight of responsibility rests really on the humans. And so the first question probably should be more about how can we get back in touch with the guardian angels so that we can have a better understanding. And also just from the perspective of the humans, there really isn't anything any of us can do to force anybody to do anything, but particularly to force divinity to interact with us. Every so often I'll get questions about, well, how do we basically bully our guardian angels into taking the kind of responsibility in our lives that we would like them to take? And that doesn't work. They're an awful lot bigger than us. We are usually not their highest priority, even though we're part of their job. They have a lot going on. And so, A, you can't bully anyone into doing anything. B, even if you could bully someone into doing something, you could not bully presences of this magnitude. And C, even the process of trying to understand how we could bully these big presences, it doesn't make us come off very well to them if we're actually trying to present ourselves as people with gratitude and people with humility who recognize that higher powers are real and that they actually do have power over our lives. And now it's up to us to respond to that reality. And that cycles around to another part of this same question where V asks basically, how can we understand our own soul contracts? This is a tricky and exciting question, particularly in the era in which we find ourselves. So let's back up a little bit and start to talk a little more about what a soul contract is. I'm going to try and translate very clearly. For the most part, anyone who was born before roughly 2013, 2014. After that, it gets dicey and the answer gets more complicated. But roughly anyone who was born before them was born having come into this life beforehand, having made a series of agreements with their guardian angels based on their history, based on the lessons that their guardian angels felt they needed to learn, based on the lessons they were willing to acknowledge that they needed to learn as a soul. In the next life, and then the next life, and then the next life. And usually it's part of a chain of different lives that are kind of building on the same lessons, building on, attempting to strengthen the same weak points that the soul has had for, hundreds of years for the most part. So usually before people are born, who are born in that era, before roughly 2013, 2014, they came in with this list things they were supposed to get done, and some of it is deeply personal, some of it is interpersonal experiences you're supposed to share with another human, experiences you're supposed to share with a geographic area, experiences you're supposed to share with a community as a whole, be it human, be it another community of sentiences on planet Earth. And so those commitments are all very different for every person. And so they're the ones that are just inside yourself, which could be something like, in this life, it's important for me to understand selflessness. It's important for me to understand what it feels like when I enter a situation in which I am not the thing that matters most. And now I need to train myself to start to focus on the person or the element of the situation that actually matters most, setting aside my own personal thoughts, my own personal feelings, my own personal wants. So that's just one example. And then there might be the other interpersonal soul contract commitments, like on this particular day, you're supposed to be standing on this particular street corner when this other person crosses the street. And sometimes it's very dramatic, like that person's going to step in front of a bus and your job is to grab that person and pull them out of the way. And if you're not there, that person might not come away from that bus experience still in their body. Often they're not that dramatic. Sometimes it's the person you're supposed to sit next to on a plane, back when plane travel was still karmically defensible. Now, the trick is, in this current era, there's a lot of breakdown between people and their own guardian angels, people and their own souls. And so the soul contract connections that used to be something you really could rely on for the most part, because of all the astral breakdown, because of all the guardian angel breakdown, the soul breakdown, and also free will choices starting to be weighed more heavily in Western society than the concept of trying to live to some kind of destiny. People are obsessed with the idea of just do whatever you want to do whatever makes you happy, and they miss out on the concept of what if you weren't actually born for very specific purposes, and what if you were really trying to figure out in such a way that you are in the right place and the right time. And that has become an extremely unfashionable conversation to have in Western society. So we've got a lot going against us to be able to actually get to our soul contracts. But all this to say, the soul contracts are still real. And now the trickiest part is that they're constantly in flux because of the free will choices of others and the breakdowns interdimensionally. And so often they will become distilled down to a very specific vibration or a very fundamental assignment. For example, if your assignment is to open portals to consistent sources of significantly higher vibration, sometimes the details of that are going to change wildly based on free will choices of yourself, of others, of circumstances outside of your control. But that vibration is still the same. Now, how this relates to V's original question, and they're kind of on a roll, so I'm really trying to translate better than I am, is when we ask, how can we make a better connection with divinity? That might be what they're saying is the best place to begin. It's possible that for each and every one of those of us who were born before 2013 or 2014, and everybody else will have to answer that question separately, probably the best way for us to connect to divinity is to more and more and more work with that vibration of what we were born to do. And now the question becomes, what were we born to do? And the great answer to that is we are in an era where almost everything has become unworkable. And if that's a conversation that is surprising to you or that you don't feel ready to have, that's a whole other step that's going to need to be taken. That's what they're saying. I'm really just trying to translate it from upstairs. So basically what they're saying is our job, each of us, is to actually really try to understand why we came into this world. And it's always something to do with stopping the destruction of the planet. It's always something to do with stopping the slide of humanity as a whole in a lot of clients into lower and lower and lower standards of how we push ourselves to act, how we accept actions from the other people around us. So I guess what they're saying is, first, it's up to us to make the connection with upstairs. They got a lot going on. A lot of people have made it very hard for their guardian angels to connect with them, almost just by refusing to be willing to have a connection with them. And second, I think the point they're trying to make is even when there's a lot of breakdown with a lot of the esoteric concepts, there is a vibration of your destiny that does live inside the body. And often in healing sessions with clients, we find it in the cells of the body. It can be hardwired into the DNA. It can be hardwired And to understand that when the body dies, it doesn't die with the body, but that is just a way for the soul, when coming into a body, to lock it in so it's less likely to fall out, is to really take it to that cellular level. And that's something that people who are comfortable with quantum physics might be comfortable thinking about, the way that molecules hold certain vibrations, and which is scientifically proven, so that's like an easy thing to work with. Part of that vibration for a lot of people, for the majority of people, although I acknowledge generalizations are tricky, is the destiny, is the soul plan locked in there. So, probably, to come back to V's question, the best way that we can make it so divinity is able to connect with us, probably for the normal person, just going about their life, really wondering, probably the first thing to do is start to develop and cultivate a sense of curiosity about what we are actually born to be doing. What are we actually made for? And probably what starts to happen when we actually start to ask that question is if we're really trying to figure it out, so that at the end of this life we don't look back on the life and think, what was I doing with all that time? That was how I spent my time. I spent my time watching TV, or I spent my time interacting with presences who had lower vibrations than the presences that I was supposed to be interacting with, or however it is that we misspent our time. There is that moment at the end of the life when we look back on it and we have the opportunity to really see it for what it was. So, the point is, when we get to the end of this life, to be able to at least look back and find a handful of things that when we came into the life, we really were supposed to get done, we really were supposed to take responsibility for. Okay, so how to do that is the real question. First, taken as your working theory, it has something to do with stopping the destruction of the planet, regardless of your political ideologies, regardless of your religious ideologies. All of us can see that fish in the sea are dying. All of us can see that there are microplastics in all of the water of the world. All of us can see that wildfires have become enormously problematic. All of us can see that there are extreme weather events that are becoming part of a life that probably most of us were not hoping to have turn out the way it's turning out. And instead of choosing to feel hopeless about that, or instead of, and this is the thing that they keep talking about upstairs, choosing to become more and more and more self-centered, to say more and more and more, everything is so bad in the world, and so what I must do in order to not feel hopeless or helpless is to do things that make me feel good in a very small way. Anyway, I need to take it as our working theory that for all of us, the soul contract has some element of putting that aside and using whatever we have, whatever skills, whatever abilities, whatever resources we have into actually stopping the destruction. So that's easy. And in that way, we make ourselves stand out from the normal human society who is doing that very selfishly focused way of coping with a very challenging era in which to be alive. In the way of cracking open that selfish focus to start to focus on how we can helping the planet as a whole, we make it more likely that they will be able to find us. We make it more likely that they will be able to get us the resources that we might want, the answers that we might want, the guidance that we might want. I hope that answers the question. Okay, so let's see what the actual question was. The actual original question is asked by V, and it's the start of a long list of questions, and we acknowledge that, was how could the divine spirit get back in touch with humans so that we can have a better understanding of hearing, seeing, listening to them. Most importantly, understanding our own soul contracts. So some of the important takeaways is that your soul contract is probably shifting rapidly. Probably every single morning you wake up and it is different. And probably that feels extremely disorienting. Probably that feels counterproductive to the task or the assignment of understanding the guidance in our lives and following it. But it is still the reality of the situation. So first, to understand that. Second, to understand that the easy cheat code for understanding what we're supposed to do with this life is look around you. There are so many problems. Pick one. At this point, it almost doesn't matter which one. The bigger the focus in general, the better. But it's really about how much you're willing to crack open that self-focus. Some people are really only to help people very similar to them, and that's fine. It's a start. So that's an easy way to start to understand our own soul contract, especially because it doesn't allow for a lot of self-editing. The thought of, it surely must be my soul contract to interact with this person because I want to interact with this person, because it usually doesn't work that way. Okay, and so the answer to how divine spirit can get back in touch with humans, it's really up to us to get that door open to the really good guys upstairs. And the best way to do it is to take selfless, courageous action on behalf of the greater good, and to start to make it a part of the lifestyle. Start to schedule out time every week. They want to say time every day, but they also feel like nobody will do that. And so, if you actually want to be noticed, probably it is time every day to take selfless, courageous action on behalf of the greater good. And generally how you can tell if something is selfless is you don't really want to do it. And generally how you can tell if something is courageous is that you feel actual fear about doing it. You can feel that there is risk. And we're not saying to jump in front of a bus. What we're saying is risk comes in a lot of different forms. So, selfless, courageous, boom, boom. Those are two easy ways to tell if a feeling is those things on behalf of the greater good. And that's really interesting. How can we tell if something is an action on behalf of the greater good? I thought that would be an easier question to answer. Let's really try to ask these presences way up there who have been so kindly answering questions today. How can you tell if something really is on behalf of the greater good? Probably it will be that you cannot find a direct thread between that action you have taken and a way that it could benefit you. And I know that it sounds like that's very similar to the conversation about selfless, but to focus on it being for a group much larger than you, and that you can't see how it will directly benefit you. I can tell I'm missing something really important about what is the greater good. Oh, interesting. I don't know if this is what they're wanting me to say, but my best guess is they're talking about if it either raises the vibration of the world as a whole or lowers the vibration of the world as a whole. And that's a little bit tricky to be able to tell for yourself. And so I don't know if that's actually all that helpful to really talk about, especially because our ideas of what vibration is higher and what vibration is lower is directly related to whatever presence is upstairs we're listening to at any given time, which can vary wildly from day to day, and that's a whole different topic. Okay, so really asking those guardian angels way up there who feel like they're getting about close to their limit of time that they're willing to spend on this question or any question. If there's anything more that we need to say, that we need to work through in answer to V's really, really good question that she posed for us. Is there anything more? There we go. Is there anything more? Is there anything more? Maybe one of the most important things to remember in terms of soul contracts and in terms of the timing in which we have lived is that sometimes we can feel like surely there is no way that I can start a system or organization that will accomplish the things that are actually needing to be accomplished. And sometimes they already exist. Or really, actually, sometimes I think what they're saying is the first step is just to start getting involved in making things better some way, somehow. So if you're right now wondering, what can I do today? For goodness sake, don't start by trying to found your own nonprofit. Start by volunteering somewhere. Every single community, I think regardless of where you are in the world, there is some organization that you can volunteer for. And that's just a great start. And if there isn't, one of the great things that you can do is you can get yourself a trash bag, you can get yourself some disposable gloves, and you can take a walk and you can pick up trash that you find as you walk. And it's super simple, it's super easy, and one of the secrets is when people see you doing that, they generally love it, and it's a wonderful way for you to look like the very good person that you're acting like. So that is a way to start, and I think the point they're trying to make is to never feel like you are not surrounded by opportunities to make this world an actually better place, not just for you, and to not make it a more comfortable place, not make it a more convenient place, to make it a place that is closer to how we are supposed to have it be, which we are already way behind on. Okay, so you can do it. You can start today. I can start today. We can all start today. And in every moment, life begins again. That's the great part. Okay, so first, let's really thank those presences upstairs who showed up to answer the questions, because they really didn't have to, and I know there were a lot of translation errors, and so thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you, and maybe if they're willing, we'll come back and we'll do another question later, because that was a good time. Okay, thank you upstairs. Thanking those presences for their time, for their willingness, for their generosity. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, if you're still with us, I don't know if we're going to do another one of these videos again, but if you have questions that you would like to ask guardian angels, if you'd like to ask higher powers, actual serious questions that you think are crucial for you to know in order to become more and more and more the person you were born to be, feel free to ask them in the comments. You know, they might be willing to answer them, they might not. I don't know how it's going to work out. But it might be worth a try to see if we can all of us come to better understanding about the interdimensional processes, how they affect our lives, and what we can do so that at the end of the life, we all feel better about how we handled our time, how we handled our resources, how we handled everything that we were given in order to accomplish the things that we were born to accomplish. So, thank you for joining us today.